Hello, Kehilat Darchei Tzion. We're Erev Shabbat Parashat Miketz, Shabbat Chanukah, and we read this week the Haftarah from the Navi Zechariah, the same Haftarah from Parashat Be'alotcha, and of course the connection between Chanukah and Be'alotcha is the end of the Haftarah that discusses the menorah. And Be'alotcha starts out with lighting of the menorah, and of course Chanukah, one of the major miracles of Chanukah, happened with the menorah in Beit HaMikdash. Also, this Haftarah is discussing Yoshua, the Kohen Gadol of the beginning of Beit HaMikdash Hasheni, the second temple. We're talking about the time of the second temple, and we're talking about the rebuilding it. The Navi Zechariah is pushing Am Yisrael to continue building Beit HaMikdash after there was lots of troubles with the nations around them, and the Persians told them to stop. And this is the situation that the Navi Zechariah is leading Am Yisrael to continue growing spiritually and maybe also psychologically, maybe even as a nation in its land and being able to independently build the Mikdash. So the Navi Zechariah starts out this Haftarah with a very interesting pasuk. The second pasuk is "V'nilvu goyim rabim el Hashem bayom hahu v'hayu li le'am v'shachati v'tochech v'yadat ki Hashem tzevakot shelachani elayich." The Navi Zechariah says there will be many goyim, many nations will come and accompany you with your connection to Hashem. Nilvu goyim rabim el Hashem, and they will be a nation to Hashem. Meaning the story of Am Yisrael is not one that is trying to disconnect itself from the nations, but at the end, the big prophecy is that Am Yisrael will connect to the other nations, or the other nations will come and enjoy the light of Am Yisrael and will connect to Hashem through Am Yisrael. That is like the great idea that this Haftarah starts out with. And when we celebrate Chanukah, and Chanukah is like an Independence Day of the Hashmona'i kingdom. And Chanukah, we're talking about where Am Yisrael had to stand up and fight for its spiritual freedom and come out against the culture of the non-Jews and detach itself from the other nations. We're talking about the building of Beit HaMikdash Hasheni, where Am Yisrael had to really argue and fight and get into many, many problems with the nations that were surrounding Am Yisrael. Yes, Koresh gave permission to build the Mikdash, but many things changed by the time of Zechariah, and things are not so easy with the nations around you. The feeling is all we have to do is take this burden of the other nations, put them aside, and be able to behave as a independent, free nation that can grow in its own way spiritually. And then and maybe the peak of this need is Chanukah. And already at the beginning of the second Beit Mikdash, when we start feeling this need for independence, and we feel the problem with our connection with the other nations, reminds us, Zechariah, that's not the end of the story. We can't just be enclosed within ourselves. We always have to look forward. We have this hope that we will be connected to the outside world, that the other nations will come and connect to us in a positive manner. We've been feeling this Chanukah, especially with all the anti-Semitism in the world and the terrorism in Australia and the war that's been going on here in Israel and anti-Semitism in other places. And this concept of Am Yisrael has to stand up for itself. We have to be independent. We have to be on our own is very, very strongly felt in this Chanukah. And this pasuk, "V'nilvu goyim rabim el Hashem bayom hahu," tells us that our hope, our dream, is not that the nations will not exist anymore, but rather that they will join us in this journey of connecting to Hashem. Shabbat Shalom and Chanukah Sameach.